Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Welcome back to Clash of the Titans. We have a doozy for you today on this episode. We've got two of the most influential rock guitarists of all time going head-to-head, locking horns. And we're talking about Mr. Jimi Hendrix and Mr. Jimmy Page, the battle of the Jimmies. Now, how am I going to choose this? I don't know. Let's just go through the categories and see what we come with.
Round one. Fight!
Okay, let's take a look at the guitar god, Mr. Hendrix. So according to the site, bestalbums.org, he sold over 25 million albums, just under 25. His number one selling album, Are You Experienced, from 1967, over 5 million album sales. Number two, a compilation album, 1992, over 3.5 mil. Number three, Experience Hendrix, the best of Jimi Hendrix, another compilation, over just under 2.5 million. Electric Ladyland, 1968, sales just over 2 million. Smash Hits, 1968, which was one of the first albums I ever bought. That sold over 2 million copies. Band of Gypsies, the iconic album Band of Gypsies with the great Buddy Miles on the drums, 1970. It sold over 2 million. I'll do one more. Axis Bold as Love, another classic album, 1967. Now I could go on and on and on, but it should be noted there's a lot of compilation albums here, which is to be expected from a classic, iconic musician like Jimi Hendrix. Okay, my friends, let's take a look at one of the biggest selling bands of all time, and here there's absolutely no comparison whatsoever. These guys have sold over 300 million albums. Let's start off with Led Zeppelin 4 from 1971, and an album that every guitarist should have in his collection. This sold 37 million units alone. Number two, Led Zeppelin 2, 1969, with album sales of nearly 16 million. Led Zeppelin 3, 1970, 13 million albums. Houses of the Holy from 1973, 12.5 million units. Led Zeppelin 1, 1969, over 10 million units. Physical Graffiti, 1975, just over 9 million albums sold. Let's go a couple more. In Through the Outdoor from 1979, nearly 7 million albums sold, and we'll finish off with a compilation. Remasters from 1990, nearly 5 million albums sold. On and on and on. There's a list of albums there as long as my arm. But I think, as far as the discography, because Mr. Page and Led Zeppelin were around a lot longer, they got a lot more content, and some of those albums are freaking kick-ass albums too, So I think we can all agree, as far as discography goes, Mr. Page and the Zepp take that one out.
Round two. Fight!
Innovation and technique. Now let's talk about Jimi Hendrix first. Now Jimmy played with a freedom and a fierceness that I don't think has been matched since. And you got to take into account this is, in an era where there was Mamas and the Papas and the Beatles. And along comes this guy with this act that would have just been so different from everything else at that time. And it was like he was trying to control a wild animal on stage. Absolutely phenomenal player. Man, that shit is just vicious, man. It's vicious. And the tone he's got going on with that amp, man, it's like it's right on the verge of freaking out. It's like he's trying to control this wild animal, It's just phenomenal. And his feedback control in particular is just something that's just never been matched before or after. He made feedback a part of his sound, a part of his song, part of his playing. and just a phenomenal player. So let's talk about Mr. Page, innovation and technique, and oh my God, what can you say? This gentleman was responsible for some of the most iconic riffs in the history of rock, man. Between him and Blackmore, man, those two cats wrote the book on riffology, man. And, you know, some of it was really simple, like Immigrant Song, you know, just... Who the fuck comes up with that shit, man? That's so powerful, so simple, you know? And I remember when I was still at school, and the first time I saw Stairway to Heaven, the video, and I videoed it, you know, on the television, and I just watched that thing over and over and over. Shit's off the chain, man. It's off the chain. I mean, that's over 50 years old, and it still takes my breath away listening to that. So how do we choose between these two monsters of rock? You know, I mean, for this one, for innovation and technique, innovation in particular, I'm going to have to go with Mr. Hendrix, with Jimi Hendrix on this one. I think he just was a little bit more out there. He was a little bit more spacey. Pushed those boundaries a little bit more, and was just more of a freak monster, you know. So on this category, I'm going to go with Mr. Hendrix.
Round 3. Fight!
All right then, let's look at influence between these two amazing players. Let's look at Mr. Hendrix first. Now, we all know that Jimmy had a much shorter career due to the fact that he died tragically young. But what he did fit into that short time period beggars belief in quality and quantity. He crammed in a lot in that short space. And if you were to ask, you know, what kind of influence did he have, you know, on the rock scene, the guitar scene? Oh man, you could argue that guy invented the rock god, man. His influence has been profound, and I would say nobody has influenced the rock guitar more than Mr. Hendrix. Okay, let's take a look at the influence of Mr. Page now. And oh man, I mean, how you look at his career, it was much longer for starters. So, and you know what, the amount of people that I know that picked up the guitar, you know, my sort of age bracket, because of Stairway to Heaven, is phenomenal. You know what I mean? So he's influenced a hell of a lot of people too. And he's did it for a lot longer because he had a lot longer career. So, but for me, you know, and this is once again a very, very close call. I'm going to have to go with Mr. Hendrix on the influence category.
Round 4. Fight!
Okay, let's look at the careers of these guys. Let's start off with Mr. Hendrix. Now, I know what you're thinking. Like, hey man, you know, Jimmy wasn't around that long. You know, I mean, a lot shorter career, and that's absolutely true. But just because it was shorter doesn't mean it wasn't as good. For example, how long has Ed Sheeran been around? 10, 12 years, you know? But to me, his career does not hold a candle to Jimmy's career, you know? So that's what I'm getting at. Now, let's look at Jimmy Page's career. You know, I mean, wow, a lot longer. I mean, it's still going, you know? So, you know, his first Led Zepp album, 1969, right through to 1980. You know, and they pumped, and that whole decade, they dominated the whole of that decade. And as I touched on earlier, a lot more album sales than Jimmy's career. So, I mean, for me, it's still close though. It's still close. But I've got to give this one to Jimmy Page. He's going to take this one.
Round 5. Fight!
All right, peeps. Now we're coming down to the last category, and I call this category the cool category, and it happens to be, in this case, the deciding category. So who was cooler? Who was more of a badass? You know? Oh man, this is hard to say. It's a hard call. Let's look at Jimi Hendrix first. Now Jimmy, as I mentioned earlier, nobody was like Jimmy. When he come along, he shook the industry up, you know. Nobody had seen anything like it, which is ultra cool unto itself. He took a lightning bolt and just shoved it up the ass of the music industry, man. And like I said, man, you can't get much cooler than that, you know. He always looked great on stage, man. He looked like a rock god, man. You know, just a badass, complete and utter badass. Let's take a look at Jimmy Page, and oh man, you know, I mean, has there ever been a cooler looking guitarist on stage?
That's cool, man. You're cool, man.
That guitar strung down low, man. I mean, that's what put me on a guitar in the first place, was looking at players like him, you know, because let's be honest, man, we wanted to, you know, be popular with the chicks, man. That's why we took up the guitar in the first place. That was for me anyway. And for far as that cool rock and roll swagger and that mean, nasty style that Jimmy had, man, and this is a tough call, man. Who's cooler? Man, I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, man, from my friends, but maybe it's because he was around for a lot longer. Maybe I just saw a lot more of him growing up. But I'm going to go for the win of the cool category, the badass category. I'm going to go with Jimmy Page. So I have, much to the dismay, I think, of many people, I have winning this head-to-head Clash of the Titans. I have Jimmy Page winning this one, only by the shortest and the slightest of margins. Now, you know, just on a side note, both these players have got, you know, taken a lot of shit from players, you know, throughout the years. You know, either they've been, you know, too sloppy, or they're slightly out of tune, man. You know, man, fuck those punks, man.
Get the fuck out of here.
This is Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page, man. I mean, these guys wrote some of the greatest songs of all time, you know, and they are almost, to me, above critique of mere mortals, you know. So I think, you know, when those kind of statements are thrown around about players like these two, I mean, it's a little bit of, you know, blowing out their candle to make, you know, mine seem brighter. I think that's what I think anyway. I like to make this analogy. When I was younger, growing up, we'd go out to clubs, watch a band, because there was a lot more back then, because rock ruled. And we'd walk into these bars, and normally they'd be really dark, and you could smell the beer and the carpet, and it was really dingy. And you look on the wall, and there was these posters by bands you'd never heard of. Some you have, and some really good bands too. But they were all sort of mingled in together, and they were signed as well. And I love that feeling, and I wish I could find more clubs like that today. Now today, you walk into a club now, it's like walking into a fucking dental clinic, man. You know, it's like sterile, it's like way too shiny, and it's lacking that mongrel that I think rock and roll's all about. So I hope you enjoyed the comparison. If you're thinking Jimi Hendrix is going to win, I was kind of too, until I broke it down. And I know it's stupid to make these comparisons. I know that, but God damn it, it's interesting as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you get a chance to. That stuff really, that shit, I mean, I fucking hate that shit, but it really helps me out, you know, as far as getting my subscriptions up. So, all right, you guys have a good day. See you later.